Welcome to the Sounds of the World. We are your hosts, Hillary and Bill.
Together, we're going to travel around the world to discover new music, discuss musical topics, and interview fascinating people.
Our world is a buffet of music, and it is time to eat. Everybody. Today we have a wonderful opportunity to speak to a wonderful young and up-and-coming composer. He's been described by Theodore Jones as a brilliant composer just barely in his 20s who seems to make waves wherever he goes. And the Dallas Morning News has called him a most impressive talent. He was born in Dallas, Texas. He attended the Richland College, studied at Southern Methodist University with Dr. Lane Harder, as well as studied with Dr. Winston Stone at the University of Texas at Dallas, and has previously worked with renowned composers such as David Mislanka, Libby Larsen, David Jubé, and Robert Xavier Rodriguez. I met this young man after a mutual friend introduced us to each other. I was quickly taken back by his abilities, raw talent, and emotional maturity for being such a young man. When he isn't composing, he's also an avid conductor, acting as a 1-2 punch. He has led ensembles such as the Orchestra Seattle, the Brevard Symphonia, the Texas Christian University Symphony Orchestra. He studied conducting under Miguel Harth Bedoya of the Fort Worth Symphony, Dr. German Gutierrez at TCU, Will White from Orchestra Seattle, and many more. When he is finding any free time from being a student, composer, conductor, he's also an avid writer and maintains a music blog as well as contributes guest articles to other blogs such as the Women's Philharmonic Advocacy. Please welcome Quinn Mason. Woohoo!
Oh, thank you.
Well, welcome to our little podcast. It's so great to talk to you. And, like I said, we'd known each other for a little bit. So it's great to finally be able to talk to you voice to voice, so to speak.
Oh, yes, for sure. Thank you for having me here. It's great to be here.
Great. And I'm just along for the ride.
So I guess a basic question that we always like to ask, and I think a lot of people are interested in, is like, so what's your musical background? Do you come from a musical family? Is this kind of something that you've always been brought into, or is it just you're kind of like the one-off?
Yeah, it's a bit of a weird background for me about how I got started with classical music, because it's mostly something I discovered on my own and something I kind of had to study and pick up on my own. So I'm not really, my family isn't musical. I'm pretty much the only musical one. I mean, I do have a couple of family members who have played musical instruments, but I'm, the only one who's actually made a career out of it. And, I got started really early. I'm 24 now, but I started at the age of 10 when in elementary school I joined required piano class. And from there, I, got started playing the piano and started, learning the basics of music. And some years after that, even, a couple of years after that, I started learning the cello. And it was around that same time that I started with composition as well. So I started with a number of things, and I gradually kind of found my way into something I love doing, which is composition. And then conducting came a little bit later when I was in high school. So.
Right. What kind of drew you into being a composer?
I did a lot of listening to music and a lot of, studying of it, in the piano class. But I also had mentors who used to give me scores and recordings of the great orchestral repertoire. And that just kind of piqued my interest. Like, at an early age, I was familiar with all the Beethoven symphonies, the last 3 Tchaikovsky symphonies, and, the Stravinsky ballets and, all the great masterworks, Right. And, I did a lot of listening, a lot of studying, and that got me really interested to kind of see if I can create my own kind of sound worlds and stuff like that. So, I started with solo pieces that I wrote for mostly myself. And then, like I remember, one of the very first pieces I ever wrote was like a cello solo, because I used to be a cellist, no longer, and then I wrote a trumpet solo, and then I piano solo and stuff like that. All of that is lost now, but like, it no longer exists because I wrote it by hand, and I guess I didn't keep up with it,
Right.
But like, that gradually grew to like chamber music, and some time after that, orchestral music. And, all of that happened so fast, but it was mostly the result of self-study. So.
Very cool.
Wow. Holy cow, that's inspirational. I feel like conducting in high school, that just blows my mind. Because
I was really bad in high school.
That's how I took my first conducting class in college, and I was like, oh my gosh, you have to have some like gumption and command of the room to do this. And I wasn't prepared at like 22 to do that. So that's, holy cow, hats off to you. That's awesome.
It's a psychological thing, but it's like, when people know who you are, and it's like, you know what you want to do, you know how to work. It's it gets really easy. So I still get nervous though. You just, it's a bunch of people in front of you that like, expect you to like lead them in a piece they already know and stuff like that. So of course it gets nervous. And then add an audience to the back of you watching you do that. So not for the faint of heart.
No. I remember they recorded us, and I have like a recording of me just like deer in the headlights, waving a baton, like in class, being like, this is the like worst moment of my life. So much respect. That's fantastic.
Thank you.
Yeah, I remember when I was in undergrad and I had to take a conducting course, and they were like, okay, everyone needs to get loose in their bodies and explore this space. And everyone's just kind of like moving around and waving their arms around.
Method.
And I'm just kind of like, oh, it's a junior high dance again. I'm just going to do the square move again. This is great. I could not I just couldn't get out of my body. So I don't know how everyone makes jokes about conductors, but I don't know how anyone could be a conductor.
It is weird because when you spend all your time watching different conductors, like, I went to a lot of DSO rehearsals when I was younger. So they had, whenever Jaap was here, Jaap van Sweden, who's now at the New York Philharmonic, around the time I started going to DSO was when he became music director in 2008. So I got to see him do a lot of the rep, but they also brought in these guest conductors. And I'm, really close with the DSO musicians. So they, you tell me exactly what they think of the conductors, So I know who makes the cut and who doesn't.
Yeah.
Orchestral musicians are like ruthless.
Yes.
Yeah.
No, they're not messing around.
They're brutal. So you had talked a little bit about your inspiration, or at least what you had studied, the Tchaikovsky and the Beethoven. And I know one of the big ones that you have always seemed to have a love affair with was Stravinsky and his Rite of Spring. There was even an article about you and how you put the Rite of Spring in like 1,100 ways or something like that on YouTube.
Oh, the beats?
Yeah, that's what it is.
The 1,133 Rite of Spring beats, yep.
Yeah. So, I mean, other than the fact that it's such an amazing piece and totally, almost completely different from everything else that was going on at the time, what kind of really drew you to the Rite of Spring?
It was actually a very personal piece because it was one of the very first pieces that I studied when I started formal composition lessons when I was 13. The teacher, gave me, and then my very first assignment was to listen to the Rite of Spring because I had never heard it at that point, and to mark down my observations. So I had a score. I had a recording, which, I really shouldn't have started with that recording, but it was the only one I had. It was a 1951 Pierre Monteur Boston Symphony recording, which is extremely messy, but of historical interest because Monteur premiered the Rite of Spring.
Oh, wow.
So But so it was, and I was using a different edition of the score and stuff like that. So I do remember listening to the piece for the first time and going, what the hell is this? And getting lost so many times, especially, at the climax in the first part. I didn't know what was happening. And then the sacrificial dance, I was like, what? The more I listened to the piece, huh?
I said that, I feel like that may be a universal reaction when you hear Rite of Spring. I remember being like, what? And then you watch
just imagine how that sounded in 1913.
Yeah.
It must have been like what, if you've ever listened to something like Thomas Addis has written, it must have been like that. But the more I listened to that piece, the more it grew on me. And, I actually, saw it live. I've seen it live 3 times, and then I've assisted it as a conductor.
Wow.
Back in February, when I guest conducted Orchestra Seattle, I was sharing the podium with the music director, and the main piece on the program was that, the Rite of Spring.
Yeah.
And so I assisted him in the rehearsals, and that was really cool to have that kind of hands-on experience with that piece. But, the very first time I saw it was in 2011, and Yop did it. And so I got to, go to the rehearsal for that and see how it, really fit together and stuff like that. It was really cool. So, I'm very intimate with that piece for many years now.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you feel like it's one of those things where the more you listen to it, the more you catch, or maybe there's a moment that you weren't even aware of the first time? Or do you have any of those, I don't know, how did that piece kind of grow for you?
It's absolutely, it's absolutely that. It's the more I listened to it, the more I discovered. And even to this day, when I pick up the score, every single day, I discover something new. It's almost like going through it and hearing it for the first. It's crazy how that piece is over 100 years old and it still sounds like it was written yesterday.
Yeah.
Right? Isn't that just I don't, oh my gosh, I don't even know. That takes special talent right there.
Oh yeah.
So
I feel that way about Prokofiev's Second Symphony. It's just, those 2 pieces, they just seem to travel the span of time and not get any older or any diminished. It's amazing.
I've not heard that piece actually.
Oh, really?
Never.
Oh, it's only 2 movements, but the second movement's a theme and variations. But the first movement is just it's maniacal. It's crazy.
I'm gonna have to listen to that then, because I like crazy. So.
So you had quite a bit of success with that, the video. In fact, you made a second video, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because I was bored again. The first video came about because I was bored, and then I was bored again. So I was like, I have over 700 recordings of the piece, so why not make a second edition? I mean, I have enough recordings to make at least 6 editions of that video.
Wow.
Man.
So, but I'm not going to make 6 editions. I think 2 is enough.
My bored moments to shame.
It was amazing. I remember a vast majority of them were pretty consistent, and then there was 1 or 2 that just it felt like it was just trudging through mud. It was so slow, these big hits. It's oh, come on.
It's really interesting to compare different elements of that, how different conductors approach that piece. Another element that I compared to that piece was the tuba playing. Did you see that video?
No, I haven't seen that one.
I gotta watch all of these.
Yeah, it's actually called Evolution of Tuba Playing in the Rite of Spring, and it's that big, that big moment in the second movement of the first part. where the tubas have this unison F.
Right.
There are different ways that tubas have played that over several years. Some of them play it strong, and some of them play it weak.
Is that the entrance of the Magi or whatever?
This is in the Augurs of Spring.
Oh, okay.
So definitely worth checking that out too.
Definitely will. One of the questions we had is, or at least I definitely had, is we've had a lot of great interviews with people, young composers, Anahita Abbasi and Nilafar and Tyson Davis. And how do you think young composers like yourself and them will change the world of classical music?
There's so much opportunity now to have diverse voices in the world of classical music, and people that come from different backgrounds, and just so much opportunity and stuff like that. It's going to be a great thing to see all these different. It's definitely going to be a melting pot of new music for sure. Like, you go to the concert hall and you hear the same Beethoven symphony or something like that gets played 1,000 times. But with the changing landscape of not only orchestral music, but classical music in general, we're going to be seeing a lot more different views on things and different new voices and stuff like that, which is going to make for very, very interesting auditory experiences in the concert hall and the recital hall and all of that. So, and like I said, there's just so much talent that in my colleagues and things like that. It's just going to be really amazing to see what kind of new music we get to hear in the future, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Man, I got to get closer to a bigger city. I'm in Billings, Montana, and I think Beethoven's on the books when.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Well, I mean, live close to Houston, and there's still a vast majority that's Beethoven and Haydn and Mozart, and even though they reach out to new composers and young composers all the time, it's a minor portion of their actual, ballots. So
hopefully you'll begin to see change in that, especially you referring to the Houston Symphony.
Yeah, the HSO.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they're definitely gonna, because I know the composer in residence, Jimmy Lopez.
Yeah,
he's one of those new diverse voices that I'm referring to. So
you'll
see
cool.
more.
I like his music. Jimmy Lopez music is really cool.
He's a very nice guy too.
Yeah. All right, Hillary, put that name on the list too.
I know. I'm okay, I've got all the notes going right now.
So what do you think in particular they could do to encourage and support young composers?
Definitely, like I said, there's a lot of different avenues to discover new talent. They do the orchestra readings with the American Composers Orchestra, and they sometimes get other professional orchestras involved, like the Minnesota Orchestra or the Buffalo Philharmonic and stuff like that. And there's a way to see what kind of orchestral music is being written today. Of course, you can also ask around in the League of American Orchestras, because they keep track of everything and stuff like that. You can see what type of new music is being commissioned and premiered and stuff like that. And you can even specifically look for, young composers, and then you seek them out. And if you like their voices, definitely find a way to not only program them, but champion them as well. And, being very young, I'm seeing a lot of my, talented colleagues, and I know exactly what kind of music that's being written, by them and stuff like that. And I'm also kind of, fortunate to, be given, opportunities to kind of not only to practice my craft, but to kind of tell a story and to, give a platform for my voice too. So, there's plenty of opportunities to discover new and interesting, composers out there, for sure. Plenty of opportunities.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Man, I love this positive outlook. I think so easy, and I just speak for anyone that grew up in rural America, it's you don't really, like the idea of composing is so far-fetched, so it's just really exciting to get to, you know, speak with somebody that is so young and doing so well in your career, just to speak about it so positively, be like, no, the opportunities are out there, get the fear out of your head, you know, there it is. So
yeah, it's not all downhill. I mean, there's a silver lining to it, you know. I mean, you know, just so you just really have to kind of make an effort, you know, because like I said, like I like to say that, you know, that the next Shostakovich is out there, and the next Mahler, and the next Stravinsky is out there. We just have to go find them.
yeah,
You know?
absolutely. Well, and to hear you speak so highly of your colleagues is exciting too. I think it's
I'm in awe of my colleagues. Like I listen to the music that they've created, and I'm just like, wow, like, you know, wow. Like I really, you know, like not only hearing my colleagues' music, but to watch them perform as well, because I know some talented musicians, and it's like, you know, some great stuff is being done in the music world today. So.
Well, and I feel like it's like when you can connect with, you know, people that you're so close with and watch them, you know, rise to, I feel like it pulls you up with them. Instead of, I feel like there's this stereotype that some classical musicians are like all out to get each other and don't want to see each other succeed. It comes from that scarcity mindset. So it's just really refreshing to hear your viewpoint and to hear you speak to that as like, no, man, if my buddy's killing it, like we're all killing it. This is awesome. Like, so just on a personal, selfish level, it's really refreshing to hear this. So
absolutely.
So tell us what it was like to the process with the Orchestra Seattle, because that was, now correct me if I'm wrong, that was a commission that also a performance, correct?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So what was the piece that they commissioned, and how was it like the process of getting out there to Seattle?
So I have my connection to them is through their music director, Will White. And Will White is a beloved mentor of mine for many years. I actually met him not too long after he finished being the assistant conductor of the Cincinnati Symphony. And he was at the time I met him, he was conducting a youth orchestra in Portland and was job hunting. But we connected because we're both composer conductors and stuff like that. And I remember reaching out to him for advice, and we had a phone call, and we just kind of hit it off and kept in touch and stuff like that. And he's been a guiding light for me ever since. And not too long after that, he got the job in Seattle as their music director. He's their second music director ever.
Wow.
And they were founded in 1969. So 2019, 2020 was their 50th season. Wow. And they wanted to, you know, celebrate it by commissioning a new work, and will commission that new work from me. And then he not only commissioned it from me, but he invited me out to conduct it as well, because he knows that, you know, I conduct, and I've worked with him a little bit as well. And so, yeah, I mean, this kind of happened that, you know, he, you know, sought to kind of, you know, bring to life a new piece to commemorate a joyous moment in that orchestra's history, which is called A Joyous Trilogy. And so, yeah, that's just kind of how it happened, you know.
That's awesome.
Yeah, very cool.
It's a really cool experience too, going out there. I've never been to Seattle before, so it's a really beautiful city.
I love Seattle.
Yeah. Seattle's such a cool city, full of life and energy. I loved it.
Rains a lot, but
yeah.
Bring your raincoat or some boots.
But you now, have you worked with the DSO as well?
Yes, I've composed. They commissioned me twice. First time they commissioned me was last year, September 2019, and the second time was this summer for a piece that's premiering next week, actually.
Wow, very cool, very cool.
So, yeah, I'm very familiar with that orchestra because I grew up with it. I went to my first youth concert in 2006 when I was 10. It was Peter and the Wolf with Sting narrating.
Whoa!
I didn't know it was serious at the time.
I love that version.
I remember distinctly. It was Sting. Well, it's like, I still don't know who Sting is. Like
nobody knows who Sting is. I'm just kidding. Believe it or not, my first introduction to Sting was a yoga video. He did a yoga video.
Oh,
yeah. Oh my gosh, what?
For it. And I was like, this is Sting. And then I started putting the pieces together, and he's got like a recording of like some John Dowland from, you know, the medieval Renaissance era. And I was like, who? Like the guy that sings in the, like, what?
The guy from Police
So
sings John Dowland.
Yeah.
You'd be surprised.
He's everywhere.
No, I remember my mom's a big Sting fan because she grew up listening to the Police. And so, you know, she was all about that. And when he released his John Dowland music and Renaissance music and things on the lute, she was all about it and purchased all his tapes. And I mean, we even got the new one where he went a little more electronic, you know. And but yeah, I remember distinctly that Peter and the Wolf with him narrating, because I saw one where it was like puppets. And it was like gross caricature of Sting and his face and things. And it was just, I remember being so funny, but at the same time I was a little kid and I was just like, this is amazing.
When they did it at the DSO, they had like characters come out and like, dress. And it was real weird. Even when I was 10, I thought it was weird.
Really?
But, you know, it was a cool experience. And so that was my very first introduction to the DSO. So more almost a 2-decade, you know, association almost.
That's awesome. Cool. Holy cow. Well, and to get to like, I don't know, I feel like it's exciting when you get to watch or an organization, like how they age throughout the years. Maybe age isn't the right word, but like, okay, so what are they doing as time progresses? Are they moving forward with things? How are they evolving as an organization? So that's pretty cool to like have that intimate relationship with that orchestra and get commissioned by them. That's awesome.
I've definitely watched that orchestra move forward into like the 23rd century. Like they're definitely moving forward fast, and I got to hear how the sound of the orchestra changed over the years, and it's definitely gotten a lot more warmer, I would have to say. But they're doing some great things right now, especially since we just got a new music director, Fabio.
Yeah.
Who is absolutely amazing. Yeah, Fabio Luisi is absolutely amazing. So
cool.
Oh, that's awesome.
I have to come up and listen to the DSO when we can finally go around.
Oh, you should. You should.
Yeah, I mean, I know I lived in Dallas for like a month or so, and we never had a chance to connect, but that would have been so cool to stay up there. It was such a cool city, so.
Yeah, a lot of cool stuff happens here. So, yeah, come back and see us sometime.
Man, I gotta get down to Texas. It's been too long. I actually grew up in Houston.
So we've kind of touched on this a little bit, about you being a conductor. And, you know, a lot of people associate, you know, a composer that does conducting on the side. You know, so like take Jennifer Higdon. You know, she's, you know, world famous composer, but little known is that she's also a really good conductor. So how do you think being a conductor helps you with your composing?
It definitely goes hand in hand. Like, you know, there's a quote from the great Esa-Pekka Solomon that goes, "My music wouldn't sound the way it does if I hadn't had the experience of conducting." And whenever you conduct, you feel music physically. Mm. And somehow, I can't really explain it, but it finds its way into your composing. And it almost makes you write more natural sounding music that fits under, you know, it feels pleasant to play and pleasant to, you know, kind of almost like perform and stuff like that. It just feels more natural, you know what I'm saying? And, you know, whenever you like compose and conduct, it's really weird whenever you have to conduct your own compositions, because then you have to, you spend all your time writing the piece, right? Then you have to go back and you have to relearn your whole piece, how to beat it, how to explain it to the orchestra, how they rehearse it and stuff like that. That was one of the things I kind of ran into whenever I was rehearsing Orchestra Seattle. I had to rehearse my own composition, and I was very new to that, even though I had done it before.
Yeah.
But in a smaller context. But then all of a sudden, I was faced with this huge orchestra.
Yeah,
right.
And
so it was a learning experience for sure. And so, you know, I'm definitely no you get better with experience for sure. And actually, my next engagement is in late January. So a couple months from now, I will be conducting the Musica Nova Orchestra in Phoenix, Arizona, in another piece of mine. But this one is going to be for strings.
Nice.
And so, I'm going little for now, but it's another chance to kind of, put together something that hasn't been, never done before. It's going to be a very special moment because the concert is about, it's a rebirth concert. And then, seeing what happened today, the piece I wrote is about renewal and rebirth and stuff like that. And so definitely it's going to be a very poignant piece. And so if you know what you want out of a piece, then conducting it should be no problem, because then you have a vision, and then you have kind of, I would have to say a map, even like a road to do what you want to do with that piece,
Yeah.
Well, that's such a powerful connection to develop. I think a lot of young composers, or at least I experienced this when I was at the University of Montana. In my undergrad, you get all excited to write a piece, and then you write something that's like totally unplayable, and you're like, well, it doesn't matter. They can figure it out as a performer. And it's such a rewarding experience when you can write a piece that, like, I love hearing when it's like you hand a performer a piece of music and they go, that was fun to play, and you're like, yes, I nailed it. Because like I never want, and maybe it's just me, and but it's like I never wanted to hand something to somebody that was like quote unquote unplayable, or like was a pain in the ass to like, I always wanted people to enjoy playing my music when they got it. So I think, having like, of course it makes sense if you're a conductor, you're really, really getting to work with those performers, getting to hear their like, this freaking bar 17 or whatever, like blah, blah, blah. You get to hear all those like moments of like, okay, now I got to rework this. So yeah, it absolutely makes sense that would be, just a beautiful, amazing thing to develop that as you're, composing. And yeah, always playing your own music is a goofy one.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And I have to admit, like I grew up in, when I was doing my bachelor's, and I was just thinking, okay, I'm going to take all of these like pedagogical courses, like strings and winds and brass, and learn kind of the technicalities of the instruments and things. But I had never really thought of like how conducting can also teach you these kinds of things as you're becoming a composer. It's pretty cool.
Definitely goes hand in hand. Like there's I always say that, composers should have the experience of conducting at least once, just so you know what it's like. And it will absolutely inform your music making. And even all those methods classes you were taking inform as conducting and composing as well. Because, when you're on the podium, you have to play everything. To know exactly the slide. It's a bit more meticulous. You have to know the slide positions on the trombone and the tuning of the timpani and all that. You have to be able to tell when something's out of tune. And so it's definitely a lot you have to do on the podium. And so definitely studying, being really intimate with the instruments is a plus in that regard.
And for those who are listening, don't like when this episode will come out, this is recorded right after they announced Joe Biden was the winner. So it's, the rebirth, we'll see what happens.
Couldn't be more relevant.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are you a conductor composer or a composer conductor, or are you somewhere in the middle? What do you think?
And let me tell you something. I was so happy when I saw that question, because it's such a huge difference. It's a huge difference between the two, because a composer conductor is like a composer who conducts, like John Adams or Thomas Addis or something like that. So they compose primarily,
right?
And then they conduct when they have to. And then a conductor composer is someone who's conducted all their life, and then decides they want to compose, like the conductor Wilhelm Furtwängler. wrote 2 symphonies. Did you know that?
No, I have never heard of this. Who is it?
Wilhelm Furtwängler, who used to conduct the Berlin Philharmonic during the 40s and 50s, wrote 2 symphonies, and they're like Bruckner, but like, drawn out even more. So if you have like a couple of hours, you might want to give his 2nd symphony a listen.
Okay.
So, but him and Esa-Pekka Salonen, who actually studied composition and played the horn, and then became a conductor and stuff like that. And actually, conductors like Stokowski wrote a symphony, and Kubelik also wrote a symphony and stuff like that. I guess today's examples of like a conductor composer would be like our new music director Fabio Luisi wrote a mass.
Wow.
It's okay, but he wrote a mass. And then I read something about Jaap van Zweden, who when they went into lockdown, he started composing.
Oh wow!
So I'm definitely looking forward to seeing what he comes up with. So, but these are people who primarily conduct and stuff like that, and then compose on. I guess decided to compose and see what happens.
Right.
So there's a huge difference. So I'm definitely more of a composer and conductor because composition is my main thing. And conducting is something that I really like to do, but only do when I have to do it. Like, I got called to do the Music Nova thing. The Orchestra Seattle thing was an invitation that I was very happy to accept. And, I've also, conducted, world premieres by my colleagues, which is always very stressful because then it's not your music, it's their music. And you have to do it justice. So,
right.
But I always like that thing of, being a composer, working with another composer as a conductor to bring their works to life. So definitely one thing I plan to do in my conducting career is to conduct a lot of new music by my colleagues and tour it around too, to wherever I end up going. So looking forward to that.
That's awesome. Yeah, I was, looking back and I was thinking, okay, well, who are these conductor composers? Who's a composer conductor? And, I thought of like Mahler, and then of course Esa-Pekka Salonen, and even like Stravinsky, like he conducted and he composed, and it's just one of those. I always wondered, maybe that's an asset I should have picked up in my education. I just like dropped that one.
No.
Another example is Berlioz, who was a composer conductor, but he led the world premiere of Liszt's first piano concerto with Liszt as the soloist.
Oh wow!
So that was really cool. I found that out. So
yeah.
And then Richard Strauss used to conduct Mahler symphonies.
Yeah.
So in history, all of this goes hand in hand.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh man, I need to do more diving into this.
It's very fun stuff to study.
Yeah.
Well, and then of course there's the great Boulez.
Oh, right.
So, yeah. So you see yourself more as the composer conductor.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Good. Okay. Now, are you still at Southern Methodist, or I think you said you're a freelancer now, right?
Now I'm freelancing, and actually I spent 5 years in it. My college life has been weird. The week after I graduated high school, I started community college. Did that for 2 years. Then spent a year at TCU, where I got some great experience. TCU just wasn't, the right place for me at that time. Mm-hmm. And so, I found the visiting student program at SMU, where I could just focus on music and play in ensembles and all that, in exchange for free composition lessons. And I did that for 2 years as a non-degree student. And, well, I don't have a degree.
But look at the experience you have. You don't need a piece of paper to tell you're a composer.
I mean, it's something I've been thinking about, and been talking to a lot of my mentors about. So I may go back to do a degree in conducting. Yeah. Not really a degree, but maybe just like a performer's diploma or something like that.
Yeah.
The place I've been looking at is San Francisco Conservatory because Edwin Outwater, who is another great mentor of mine. And so I'm definitely looking at that for the future. But for now, that's probably not going to be for like 2 years because I'm booked 2 years in advance with commissions and stuff like
Wow.
Amazing. No, like, oh,
so
that's the dream. So you get the paper to get the dream, but you bypass the paper and are in the dream.
I mean, I've been working hard since I was like little, so
Yeah, well, and it
it's
shows, like, yeah,
it paid off. So
yeah. I think there's that misconception that, like, oh, I have to go pursue higher education to get to be, you know, to make it as a composer. But I mean, if you find the right mentors and you put in the hours and hours and hours of study and writing, like, you can bypass that formality of I have a degree in this and have arguably a more successful or just as successful career. So that's up to you.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, it's right for some people, and
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And it's, I think any path you choose is a good one as long as you're dedicated and you put the work in. And
absolutely.
Although if you went to San Francisco, you could study with David Conti too, and
yeah,
he's brilliant.
Okay.
name dropping all the emo professors.
Yeah, really. Yeah, so that kind of touched on at least my last question was like future plans. So you're booked 2 years out.
Man,
You've got the Musica Nova thing. I mean, is there anything like else that you can tease us with?
I can share some of my future projects.
Yeah.
Besides the music Nova, that's already been written,
Yeah.
and the parts are sent off, and the score is being studied right now.
Oh, wow.
I'm in the process of restudying what I've written. It's hard, but I have a vision for the piece. But some of my upcoming stuff that I'm writing is I'm writing an oboe piece for someone who actually used to be in the National Symphony Orchestra, and it's going to be called Dream Triptych or Dream Trilogy or something like that. And the second movement will be in the memory of his mother, who passed away recently. And so, really interesting piece to write, especially for solo oboe, which I have no experience writing for in a solo context. So there's that. And then the things I'm booked for is I'm working on my 5th symphony, actually, for Seattle yet again.
yeah.
And this is going to be specific. I'm not going to conduct this. Oh no, I'm not going to conduct this. It's going to be specifically for Will White to conduct, because, you know, it's my gift to him for being such a great mentor for me for, you know, almost 5 years. So my 5th symphony.
Wow.
And I'm also kind of in the beta stages of a violin concerto.
Wow.
Specifically a concerto for violin and orchestra.
Yeah.
Or another good friend of mine, the concertmaster of the Wichita Symphony, Holly, what's her last name? Mulcahy, who I connected with this summer. She's absolutely fantastic, and she's premiered 2 of my pieces, so we have a working relationship. And so, and I just got commissioned for another piece for band, which is admittedly an avenue I haven't been down much. I know there's a market for band, but I really haven't been writing that much for band. So, but it'll be really interesting. So this is for 2 years, like 2022. So.
Oh, nice.
That's awesome.
Plenty of time to band.
Do a lot of score study
Man,
on
that's-
band writing.
Well, I mean, David Maslanka, so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think, so like I met him when he came down to Louisiana and worked with LSU, and then he went to Texas, right? And you met up with him there?
When did you meet him at LSU?
Ooh, it was like 6 months before he passed away.
Mm.
If he went to Texas right after LSU, that may have been my meeting with him, because he went to College Station.
Mm.
This was February 2017.
Yeah, I think so. Well, okay, so he came into LSU at like 2018, I think.
2018? You sure?
I think so. I have to Google it.
He passed in August 2017.
Oh, has it really been that long?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
Which, oddly enough, he lived in Missoula, Montana. I never met him, but I had some colleagues that studied with him when I was at the University of Montana.
Mm.
Oh, it was
Wild.
2017. So it was August of 2017.
Mm-hmm.
So, but I remember meeting him, and yeah, it was crazy. So
happened so fast too. So
yeah.
He left behind a bunch of great wind band works, like his Fourth Symphony, and I mean all of his symphonies. Really, like the Eighth is absolutely fantastic. And actually, I do have a bit of a funny story to tell because actually, sometime after he passed, I wrote "Soul to Soul," which is a piece of mine that's gaining a little bit of traction.
Mm-hmm.
And in it, I wrote it in the style of Maslanka to pay tribute to him. So I use, chorales, and I quote something from his symphonies as well. And his general style of writing for band, I, pay tribute to in that piece. And I do insert a quote from the Eighth Symphony in that piece.
Aww.
And so I remember at the reading, which was at the TCU band with Bobby Francis, the piece, they're playing the piece, they're reading it and stuff like that. And the grad student is sitting in front of me and he didn't have a score. And as soon as we got to that part, he turned around and was like, "Is that the Eighth Symphony?" And I was like, "You got me." So.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, no, I told him.
He turned around like he was like, "I know what you did there."
I got my eyes on you.
No, I told David, like, my favorite piece of his was the Dreams, Children's Dreams,
Mm-hmm.
Garden of Children's Dreams, and it's just like, it's such an amazing piece, I don't think it gets enough recognition.
Oh, it's very challenging too. It's a very hard piece of music, but it's so beautifully written. Oh my gosh.
Oh yeah.
He wrote for the band like it was an orchestra, and his Fourth Symphony was so inspiring to me. It's just like, because in high school, I played so many bad arrangements and Sleigh Ride and oh my gosh. I mean, it kind of distorted my view of what band could really be.
Mm-hmm.
And then I heard, his Fourth Symphony, and I got a score and all that. And it just kind of gave me a whole new perspective on the medium. So I did make it a point when I met him to, ask his secret for how do you write for the wind band so effectively. And he told me he likes to take walks and stuff like that. And that's how he gets most of his ideas from nature, because he was a very spiritual person.
Yeah. Because he didn't he stopped listening to external music, is what one of my friends was saying. And if you probably haven't been to Missoula, but Missoula is such a you're very connected with nature in Missoula. You're like in the valley, and you can drive 5 minutes in any direction and be in the hills and like completely out of town. And it's such a beautiful place. But hearing you say, I'm like, oh yeah, like of course in Missoula you can just dip out of town and just check out, and yeah.
No wonder he lived there then. So
yeah. Man, I wish I had done more. I think I was too young, didn't know what the hell was going on. I'm like looking back, I'm like, I lived like 10 minutes from him. What the hell's wrong with me? But,
well, and every morning he woke up and he played a Bach chorale.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I
remember he told me that.
I do remember when.
Oh, I'm going to have to look at those more now.
He definitely said it was kind of like his daily bread almost. And stuff like that. I do remember when he was doing like a seminar for like the composition students at A&M. This was something different, but he was doing that. And then he was, all of them brought in MIDI recordings. And I think, he was like, okay, let's humanize this recording. Let's all, because it was like a class of observers watching, let's all sing this. And then he conducted the entire class in a reading of that composition. He said, let's put a human element in it. That's what he said. And I'll never forget that. I didn't sing, but I'll never forget that.
Yeah,
I can't sing, so.
Yeah, I remember he told us, he's like, he would play through it, and then he would pick a line, any of the lines, soprano, alto, tenor, or bass, and then he would sing that while leaving that omitted in his playing. And I was just like, what the? I was like, absolutely. Oh my gosh. Oh.
Did he tell you what happens when he like gets to the end of the all of the chorales, he starts again, or he started again.
Wow.
Yeah.
He got to the end. He played them all, got to the end, and then played them all again.
Well, just turn the page, flip the book back over, and no, very cool.
Yeah, he was cool.
This was just so fun. I just really enjoyed
it. Was.
Yeah.
It's it's a very historic day.
Yeah.
Yes.
It is.
Everything of the
We
word.
just have to wait and see what happens, but it'll only get better from here.
All right. Well, Quinn, thank you so much for joining us today and on this big historic election day. It's been so wonderful talking with you and discovering your music and talking about the dichotomy of composer, conductors. And so thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. Absolutely.
Yeah, thanks so much for this. Your story is incredibly inspiring, and I now have a page of notes to go research, so thank you.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
Perfect. All right. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Sounds of the World podcast. We hope you enjoyed the episode. There are links to everything in the episode description and also on our website.
You can follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Sounds of the World. To show support for Sounds of the World podcast, please join our Patreon, where you can have access to our after-party discussions with guests, discounted merchandise, and even more.
If you have any questions, answers, or episode suggestions, please email us at soundsoftheworldpodcast@gmail.com. Well, Bill, I think I'm going to go have a beer now.
Hey, there you go.